Hello and welcome back, adventurers. Get comfy as we drink our cups of tea at the inn covered by the mists. According to the native sources, Mordent is broken down into several rough regions. Among these areas are the Forest of the Ancients, the immense forest that borders the Midlothian to the north, and the Great Moor, a treacherous boggy marsh to the north of Mordenshire. Mordenshire proper covers Arden Bay, the town and its environs, and coastal Mordent along the great chalk cliffs. Upon crossing the border from Midlothian in the north, one is almost immediately immersed in a vast evergreen forest. A tiny hamlet by somewhat ominous name of Hope's End stands at the edge of the trees. Local legend claims that the Boisterby family manor, a magnificent three-story affair of stone and massive timbers, can still be seen through the trees on the nights when the moon is high. There are tales that the manor itself stalks through the forest like a hunting animal, never appearing in the same place from night to night, and that those unfortunate enough to be caught in its path are never seen again. South of the forest, just before reaching the Arden River, the gloomy woods give way to a vast expanse of low-lying bog and marshlands. Known as the Great Moor, called so for the sheer volume of that blasted place. According to local residents, the marsh has been expanding steadily for the past century or so, when at last it stopped not that far away from Mordenshire itself. Local legend points to a curse placed on the vanished Viscott family, but in this case, then either the curse has been lifted or it lies dormant, awaiting its new victim. Mordent coastline is composed of massive chalk cliffs, which are interrupted only by the mouth of Arden Bay. According to the sailors working the docks in Mordenshire, the two stretches of cliffs are named the Pale Lady and the Ashen Man. Arden Bay has earned a reputation as a stable and reliable trading port with an eccentric building style. Majority of the houses are built either halfway up the cliff or fair distance inland. Natives told me that when roused by a powerful storm, waves rise like tiny mountains from the grey waters to slam ships and shores alike. Some sailors say that the great serpent that lies at the bottom of the bay is responsible for those storms. The movement of its tremendous body are what caused the waves to rise up and disappear with such violent suddenness. At last, reaching the eastern border across the Arden River, one comes to the aptly named Vale of Twilight, a lonely stretch of foggy land and murky forest, even by the standards of this windswept realm. While a number of small towns and a fair count of sizable farms can be found in the area, its most prominent feature is the graveyards. The local folk claim that more graveyards are in this area than anywhere else in the domain. Nearly all of them are deserted now, having once been tended by the vanished Mornsworth family. It is a frightening journey indeed, most particularly at night when the fog settles on the ground and all that is visible are the crypts and monuments, standing like islands in the sea of mist. Mordent's primary artery is Arden River. Grey and featureless by appearance, the river almost appears as a pane of darkened glass until one realizes that in fact it is moving extremely quickly, as if becoming eager to join with the sea. Most notable of the Ferry Crossings is Smythe's Shadow, so named for the wizened ferryman that runs it, who lives in a tiny shanty house at the base of an old hanging tree at the edge of a rowing town. River legend cautions against attempting any ferry crossing after dark, however, especially when the fog is deep. Many tales speak of travelers who stepped on a mist-shrouded ferry only to find their ferryman to be a little more than bones, and their ferry headed for somewhere place terrible. Smythe Post was once the town of Stadwell, which was owned by the vanished Holloway family until a series of mysterious events that occurred well over a quarter-century ago. The decrepit manor still sits on a hill overlooking the crossing, flanked by woods on either side. Once, Stanley was a bustling trading port, one of the last stops before Arden Bay, but now it lies quiet, the lone ferryman its only inhabitant. According to Smythe, occasionally groups of adventurers will seek out his crossing in search of the fabled wealth supposedly still locked away in the Holloway house, but none have ever returned successful. The most pitiful aspect about all of Mordenshire is the condition of its roads, or rather the lack thereof. One road of any note ends from the Forest of the Ancients to Mordenshire. Mill Road, which seems a rather humble thing of mud and stone, until one realizes that nearly all other roads in the domain are little better than grass-covered wagon ruts. Considering this is the main artery of overland commerce to such wealthy trading partners as the Midlothian, a lot of charming thoughts of fishmongers and aristocrats being trapped in the same sort of space rises up, but I shall leave any such jests to listeners' imagination. Another quality noted about the landscape is what the natives have placed upon it, which is often the only relief for the eyes from the aforementioned long journeys. Owing to a general lack of available stone and iron, most Mordentish folk live in the houses constructed entirely of wood and mud for insulation. A chimney is essential for the hearth, needed to battle the cold climate, but it is usually the most expensive part of the building, since adequate stones must be found. The inside of Mordentish houses is thus often quite dark and somewhat musty, lit only by the fire of the hearth and candles carried by hand. Mordentish nobles generally live in wooden houses as well, but as a rule, they can afford to incorporate certain amounts of extra stone or metal work into their estates as well, a high iron gate for example. These houses generally stand at the edge of a given town, whereas the dwelling of the common folk are clustered together around a small town square. This distance denotes distinction, requiring one's associates to make a point to come and see their wealthier friends. Most notable of all those additions, however, are the many magnificent and crumbling manor houses I encountered on my travels. Indeed, many villages are situated at the base of a forgotten decaying manor house or its estate, the once beautiful lawn choked with weeds. According to local legend, many of these houses still contain much of the finery they did when they were first abandoned, if one were brave enough to take a closer look. Yet, these houses remain untouched, not only out of respect for the dead, but for the fear of them as well. Although first-time visitors may swear otherwise when they see the vast expanses of the moors, there really is a fairly diverse array of flora to be found in Mordent. The Forest of the Ancients in the north is an excellent example, a forest of striking evergreens that nonetheless shelters a number of smaller plants and shrubs, most particularly a species of berry-producing shrub known as the Devil's Tears. This small shrub is famous for the dark red berries it bears, which when consumed produce an exceedingly hot sensation as well as a rush of a very sweet flavor, and are thus used to spice dishes, especially desserts. Another fascinating piece of flora is the ray fruit. The tiny white flower glows faintly in the moonlight and is a natural trail maker in the green depths of the swamp. It is also notable as one of the only plants Mordentish folk trust near a cemetery. Legends of horrifying flora that has become possessed by the spirits of the dead or that has fed from corpses are common cautionary tales in this domain. The wildlife Mordent have in rather alarming numbers are creatures related to the mists, which naturally seem to find this land very hospitable. Legends of mist ferrymen who steal away unwitting passengers and penhounds that stalk the foggy moors nightly. Tales speak of portions of the mist themselves coming to life and striking the prideful and unrepentant. Indeed, Mordent seems to be a natural gathering place for all things incorporeal, as the only type of tales more common than the stories of dangers in the mists are those of ghosts and hauntings, for which the land is justly famous. Mordentish make few distinctions, calling just about every restless spirit a ghost, and I was not foolish enough in my travels to try and prove them wrong. Thank you so much for your time, patient listeners. Mordent is an intriguing domain, and I hope that you will stick around with me for the full story. But for now, as always, take care while crossing the mists.